This HOA nightmare began with Brenda Whitmore. She destroyed my trash can 57 times with her $60,000 pearl white Escalade. So I replaced it with a concrete one, sat back, and watched her destroy her own SUV instead. What started as daily property destruction ended with criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and one very costly lesson in bullying the wrong neighbor. The sharp crack of plastic braking used to echo through the dawn, followed by the scrape of bumper against asphalt as her SUV sped away, leaving my garbage scattered like confetti. But bullies never expect their victims to fight back with solid, unshakable evidence. By the end of this feud, she demolished her own vehicle, exposed a $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and proved that some neighbors won't bow to fake authority and clipboards. Seriously, what would you do if your neighbor turned your street into a demolition derby every morning? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know if HOA madness like this is infecting your town too. But first, let me back up. My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, a licensed electrician for over 2 decades, recently divorced, and fighting for joint custody of my 2 kids, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, a cookie-cutter HOA suburb in Ohio where lawns must be exactly 2.5 inches tall, and mailboxes only come in 3 approved colors. I bought the corner lot 3 years ago after signing divorce papers, thinking it'd be a fresh start, a safe neighborhood, and decent schools. What I didn't count on was Brenda Whitmore. She's 52, a widow, retired banker, no kids, and self-appointed compliance officer. That title doesn't even exist in the bylaws, but she treats our dues like her private slush fund. Protected by her buddy, the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, she's untouchable. Now here's the setup. My corner lot means trash pickup requires my bin to be placed within 3 feet of the curb every Tuesday. City ordinance demands it. Unfortunately, that spot sits exactly where Brenda takes her daily 6:15 a.m. power walk. The first incident happened one September morning while I was getting the kids ready. Coffee brewing, garbage truck still 20 minutes away, and then crack. A sound like a gunshot. I ran outside to find my brand new trash can obliterated, garbage scattered like a bomb went off. Brenda sat there in her Escalade, rolling down her window with fake concern. "Oh my, these streets are so narrow," she said, dripping with insincerity. I figured it was an accident. I cleaned it up in pajamas while my kids cringed from the window. But that week, it happened 3 more times. Always 6:15. Always Brenda. By the next Tuesday, I knew it was deliberate. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Olivia, confirmed it. Brenda purposely steered close to hit my can. I tried reasoning with her, but she just smiled and suggested placement timing adjustments. That's when I started digging into municipal codes and HOA bylaws. Trash cans, it turns out, are personal property even on the right-of-way. And our HOA has no rules about timing or materials. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 cans at $92 and my kids were stressed out. Brenda, meanwhile, had started smirking during her drive-bys. This was war. 2 weeks into October, she escalated with a certified violation letter. Official legalese accused me of obstructing traffic, with $50 daily fines. I spent nights cross-referencing laws until I found my defense. City code requires trash cans exactly where I placed them, and HOA jurisdiction ends at the property line. They had no authority. So I gathered evidence, ring camera footage, a survey proving compliance, and a written statement from Mrs. Olivia. At the next HOA meeting, I laid it all out. Ordinances, surveys, attorney consultation, everything. Brenda went pale. The board had nothing. But she wasn't finished. As we left, she cornered me in the parking lot and spat venom about people like you ruining neighborhoods. Everyone heard the racial undertones. My pocket phone recorder captured every word. That night, my kids asked if we'd have to move again. I promised we wouldn't. And for the first time, neighbors began questioning Brenda's authority. November brought colder weather and a colder fight. Brenda weaponized bylaws to bury me under new violations. Grass height, mailbox color, even tiny screen tiers. Fines stacked up fast, but I walked the neighborhood documenting the same issues at 14 other homes. Selective enforcement, clear as day. Around that time, a contractor friend gave me the idea that changed everything. There's no rule about what material your trash can has to be made of. Plastic, metal, concrete, it all counts. And that was the seed of Brenda's downfall. The math was simple, $47 in materials versus the $350 I was facing in mounting fines and destroyed bins. But before I could enjoy my concrete upgrade, I had to deal with Brenda's harassment campaign. Tuesday night, I compiled photo evidence of every comparable violation in the neighborhood. By Wednesday morning, I filed a formal complaint against the HOA board for selective and discriminatory enforcement. And here's the thing I've learned from 2 decades wrangling electrical permits. Bureaucrats hate when you use their own rules against them. My complaint forced the board into a corner. Either enforce bylaws across the board or admit they were targeting me. Neither option played well for Brenda. The deeper I dug, the worse she looked. Over the past year, she had issued 67 violation notices. Of those, 49 went to single parents, minorities, or elderly residents. Only 18 targeted married couples or long-timers. The discrimination was blatant enough to practically hang a lawsuit banner over her head. I remembered reading that HOA enforcement patterns like this could violate the Fair Housing Act and even trigger federal investigations. The image of Brenda trying to explain herself to a civil rights attorney gave me my first genuine smile in weeks. By Friday afternoon, it was time for my own project. Emma and Tyler helped me mix concrete in the garage, laughing as classic rock played on my paint-splattered radio. The smell of wet cement brought me back to childhood, helping my dad pour our basement floor. Something permanent, something that lasts. The design was simple, hollow base for stability, drainage holes for function, a normal plastic shell outside. From the curb, it looked like every other bin in the neighborhood. Inside, it was 60 pounds of rebar-reinforced concrete, an immovable object waiting to meet Brenda's unstoppable force. Monday morning, I placed it in the usual spot. At 6:15 sharp, here came Brenda, escalated rumbling. She slowed a little, something about the can unsettled her, but then rammed it at her usual 15 miles per hour. The sound was glorious. Not the sick crunch of plastic, but a solid thunk, followed by the screech of metal folding against concrete. Her running board bent like tinfoil while my trash can didn't even flinch. Through my kitchen window, coffee warm in hand, I watched her sit frozen in disbelief. She tried again from another angle, same result. More damage to her SUV. 0 to mine. And here's the beauty, it was 100% legal. No ordinance violated, no HOA rule broken. Just a homeowner upgrading his bin. If she wanted to keep hitting it, that was her insurance problem. By week's end, she had racked up nearly $800 in damage while Mike bore nothing but a few scratches. The neighborhood was buzzing, and this time, Brenda wasn't controlling the story. By mid-November, she'd gone from neighborhood watchdog to full-blown stalker. Her Escalade, now decorated with dents and scratches, cruised by my house at odd hours. One night, Mrs. Olivia called, whispering that she'd seen Brenda in my driveway with a flashlight and a bathroom scale, apparently trying to weigh the trash can. The mental image of her sneaking around in sensible shoes at midnight nearly made me choke laughing. Her investigation escalated. She cornered Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, at the hardware store to interrogate him about concrete purchases. She even combed through my social media for construction clues. But the most desperate stunt came when she weaponized city bureaucracy again. A weary inspector named Pete knocked on my door about a complaint of an unauthorized concrete structure. He looked at my bin for 30 seconds, shook his head and muttered, "It's a trash can, not a foundation. No violations." Even he seemed embarrassed to be there. Not deterred, Brenda pushed the HOA to demand property access for compliance verification. The letter claimed they needed to inspect my modifications for safety violations. But thanks to my research, I knew the law cold. HOAs can't barge into private property without cause. Case law made it clear, no warrant, no entry. I replied firmly that they could look from the sidewalk, but nothing more. The smell of Brenda's frustration was almost as sweet as wet cement. Meanwhile, Her Escalade was becoming a rolling billboard for concrete's durability. Running boards bent, bumpers cracked, headlights rattling. Neighbors started gossiping openly. Kids on Elm Street even started a betting pool on whether she'd hit the can each morning. Tyler suggested charging $5 tickets to fund his college tuition. Emma half laughed, half groaned that her friends were calling us the Concrete Can family. The turning point came during a community gathering when Patricia Lopez, the only sensible board member, pulled me aside. In hushed tones, she told me Brenda had been pushing for more enforcement powers, property inspections, material restrictions, even background checks on contractors. And then came the bombshell. Brenda had been pushing contracts through the board for a company no one knew. Always detailed proposals, always ready. Patricia's hunch? Brenda was hiding something. That night, my research shifted gears. If she was obsessing over contracts and control, maybe the motive wasn't just power. Maybe it was money. A quick dive into public records confirmed my suspicion. 6 months earlier, Whitmore Construction LLC had been formed, listing Brenda as a 40% owner and her husband as president. Since then, they'd won 7 HOA maintenance contracts worth $23,400, always underbidding competitors by just enough to edge them out. The kicker? Brenda had personally voted to approve everyone. The conflict of interest was glaring. State law requires board members to disclose financial interests, and Brenda hadn't. What I held in my hands wasn't just evidence of petty harassment. It was proof of embezzlement. She wasn't just a bully with a clipboard, she was a fraud funneling community dues into her own pocket. Worse still, the timeline matched perfectly. She launched her harassment campaign days after I innocently questioned the HOA's inflated repair costs. My reinforced trash can wasn't just blocking her SUV, it was protecting the paper trail of her scheme. I printed everything, backed it up on 3 cloud drives, and sent the file to my attorney, Amanda Sterling, with one note: urgent review, possible criminal fraud. The war had shifted. Brenda thought she was breaking me with fines and harassment. What she didn't realize was that she'd just run headfirst into her own downfall. By Tuesday morning, her Escalade had over $1,200 in damage, while my trash can remained unmoved, literally and figuratively. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about trash cans, bylaws, or morning demolition derbies. I was thinking about justice. About protecting my community. And about how sweet it would feel when the bully finally learned that sometimes, her victims bite back harder. That night, my garage became a war room. Folding tables, mismatched chairs, and an evidence board strung together with red yarn. Mrs. Olivia arrived first, nervously clutching a thermos of jasmine tea. She wasn't the only one ready to fight back. Jim Torres arrived still in his maintenance uniform, tool belt clinking with every step. Patricia Lopez came with a thick stack of HOA financial records she'd borrowed from the board's files. Last through the door was Dale Kowalski, balancing a box of donuts and grinning like we were planning a surprise party instead of a takedown. "All right," I said, taping the final chart to the garage wall. "Here's what we're dealing with." The evidence layout looked like a federal investigation board. $23,000 in questionable contracts. 7 separate conflict of interest violations. 47 documented harassment incidents. And 1 increasingly battered Escalade, serving as a rolling exhibit of Brenda's unraveling. Patricia gave a low whistle as she scanned the financial analysis. "I knew something was off with those contracts," she muttered. "But this is systematic." Every time I asked questions, Brenda had her answers rehearsed, like a script. Dale studied the collision photos with professional detachment. "That bumper alone will run her $2,000. And she's probably already got alignment issues that'll chew through tires. Your trash can's giving her a very expensive education." For the next hour, we mapped out our offensive. Jim would monitor Brenda and record retaliation attempts. Mrs. Olivia would spearhead a petition drive. Patricia would work from the inside, rallying the board toward a financial audit. Dale would serve as our construction expert for evidence verification. The legal angle required finesse. Attorney Amanda Sterling confirmed we had airtight cases for harassment, fraud, and board misconduct, but timing was everything. File too early, and Brenda could cover her tracks. Wait too long and she might bury evidence. I leaned on my electrician's instincts. Complex problems need layered solutions. Fixing just one fuse doesn't solve a short circuit, you've got to address the system. Our approach would strike from 4 fronts at once. Legal pressure through lawsuits and criminal complaints. Social pressure with petitions and testimony. Political pressure via media exposure. Financial pressure through audits and contract cancellations. The neighborhood awakens. By Wednesday morning, the organizing began. Armed with glossy handouts and undeniable documentation, I knocked on every door in Pinewood Gardens. The response was electric. 89 signatures for property rights. 34 demanding financial audits. 12 volunteers pledging public testimony. Mrs. Rodriguez nearly slammed her door in my face, until I explained. 5 minutes later, she was scrawling her name furiously on the petition. That woman fined me for leaving my garbage out 15 minutes early, she snapped. 15 minutes. Like we've got garbage police timing us with stopwatches. Patterns emerged quickly. Brenda's staunchest defenders were older homeowners who had benefited from selective enforcement. Newer residents sat on the fence, worried about retaliation. Everyone else? Ready for blood. Media, memes, and momentum. By Friday, our story was bigger than the neighborhood. Channel 7's investigative reporter Sarah Kim scheduled interviews. Our Facebook group ballooned to nearly 70 members in 4 days. Someone edited a time-lapse video of Brenda's morning collisions set to circus music, and it went viral across suburban mom groups. Meanwhile, the concrete fortress kept doing its work. Attempt number 53 left her headlight dangling like a broken tooth. Kids began gathering at bus stops early to watch her daily demolition derby. Emma admitted her friends were calling us the family with the indestructible trash can, while Tyler started charging classmates 50 cents to watch the video compilation on his phone. By Sunday night, everything was in place. Board meeting, Tuesday. Media coverage, Wednesday. Criminal complaints, Thursday. 118 residents committed to showing up, with 17 ready to speak. The hammer was cocked. Brenda unravels. The weekend before the board meeting, Brenda spiraled. Saturday night, spray paint hiss woke me up. My motion lights revealed a crouched figure tagging move across the trash can in neon orange. 30 seconds with a pressure washer erased it. My security cameras caught everything, including her license plate. Monday, the gas company arrived after an anonymous tip about suspicious digging on my property. 2 hours of scanning later, the inspector shrugged. Whoever reported this either has terrible eyesight or serious mental issues. Nothing here. Tuesday, Jim pulled me aside at the hardware store. Marcus, she hired a security firm to watch your house. $200 a day. Over a trash can. The woman's lost it. Her surveillance worked both ways. My upgraded system caught her late-night stakeouts, flashlight inspections, and erratic patterns. The footage painted a portrait of a woman unraveling by the day. The breaking point came Wednesday when Emma overheard Brenda smearing me at school pickup, muttering about dangerous influences and bad role models. The racial undertones weren't subtle. That's when I brought in Beth Morrison, a retired detective specializing in harassment cases. For $200 a day, I had a professional documenting every escalation and preparing expert testimony. By Friday, Brenda crossed into outright criminal territory. Tyler discovered a GPS tracker magnetized under my work truck. I photographed it, carefully removed it, and drove straight to the police. Officer Martinez frowned as he took the report. Mr. Holloway, this isn't neighborhood drama anymore. Unauthorized surveillance, stalking, harassment. We're building a criminal file. Fraud, fire, and a failing escalate. Meanwhile, Brenda tried milking her insurer with a $3,200 claim for road hazard damage. Unfortunately for her, my camera footage showed weeks of deliberate collisions. State Farm's investigator needed less than 5 minutes with my evidence package before shutting it down. Ma'am, this isn't road damage. This is you deliberately hitting an object. We're denying the claim and referring it for fraud investigation. Community pressure boiled over. Our Facebook group passed 90 members, each sharing horror stories of Brenda's harassment. Even Gerald Thornfield was quietly backing away. By Saturday, collision attempt number 57 left her bumper fully detached. Neighbors watched from their windows as Brenda, dressed in her business blazer, crouched in my driveway collecting broken pieces of her SUV. It would have been hilarious if it weren't so sad. By Sunday, our case file was complete. Criminal harassment, financial fraud, insurance fraud, community organizing, a mountain of evidence. Tuesday's board meeting wouldn't be a confrontation, it would be an execution. Brenda just didn't know it yet. Desperate gambits. But Monday morning, 12 hours before our ambush, Brenda tried one last Hail Mary. Gerald Thornfield called an emergency closed-door session, citing liability concerns. Inside, attorney Harold Masterson racked up $400 an hour while Brenda waved documents like surrender flags. Patricia texted me live updates. She's claiming you made terrorist threats. Wants emergency powers to seize your dangerous modifications. Harold looks like he'd rather defend serial killers. Their cover-up attempt was laughable. Backdated conflict of interest forms, timestamps that didn't match, emails that betrayed the fraud. Meanwhile, the insurance investigation gained speed. Subpoenas were flying. The paper trail was collapsing on Brenda faster than her Escalade suspension. Then came the most shocking twist of all. Richard Whitmore, her husband, called me directly. His voice was broken, desperate. "Marcus, this has to stop. She's burned $8,000 on lawyers, repairs, surveillance. Our insurance is gone. Contracts are collapsing. What will it take to make this go away?" For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. "Richard," I said evenly, "your wife stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed fraud, and stole from 127 homeowners. This doesn't go away with an apology and a check." And that's when I realized Brenda hadn't just lost the battle. She'd already lost the war. The escalation came just 2 hours before the board meeting. Brenda filed an emergency restraining order, armed with fabricated voicemails, doctored photos, and witness statements from people who didn't exist. Her petition was so sloppy it didn't survive 5 minutes of judicial scrutiny. Judge Patricia Williams dismissed it outright. "Ms. Whitmore," the judge said, flipping through the so-called evidence, "these recordings are obviously edited, these photos staged, and these witnesses appear to be fictional. Filing false evidence is contempt of court. This is your only warning." But Brenda's legal troubles were piling up faster than her failed collision attempts. The state insurance commissioner had investigator Maria Santos building a fraud case. The DA's office was reviewing harassment and stalking charges. And thanks to Patricia Lopez, the IRS now had full copies of the financial records showing unreported income tied to Whitmore construction. By 6 p.m., the community center parking lot looked like Black Friday at Best Buy. Cars stretched down Maple Street. Neighbors carried folding chairs, homemade signs, and a simmering anticipation. News vans rolled in, Channel 7, Channel 12, and a Metro weekly reporter with a notepad already in hand. Inside, the room meant for 40 was jammed with 118 residents. The overflow spilled into the hallway. The air reeked of sweat, coffee, and tension thick enough to slice with a drywall saw. Brenda arrived late, dressed in black as though she were attending her own funeral. Her attorney, Harold Masterson, hovered at her side whispering rapid-fire counsel, while board president Gerald Thornfield tugged at his tie like it had turned into a noose. Masterson's opening remarks about frivolous complaints were cut short when Mrs. Olivia stood up, holding a stack of notarized statements. "Excuse me," she said firmly, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and stealing money?" The room exploded in applause and nervous laughter. 17 neighbors spoke during public comment, each armed with documents, collision photos, violation notices, bank records. 3 bankers' boxes of evidence sat at the front like exhibits in a trial. But the true spectacle came at 6:45, when Officer Derek Martinez walked in holding a folder. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice carrying over the hushed room. I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges. The blood drained from Brenda's face. Thornfield slumped. Masterson muttered frantically, "Game over." The crowd roared when I wheeled in Exhibit E, my concrete trash can, parked it by the podium, and began the presentation. "This isn't about garbage cans or bylaws," I said, facing the packed room. "It's about accountability and ending corruption before it destroys our community." One by one, I laid out the case. 57 recorded collision attempts. A GPS tracker illegally placed on my truck. Spray paint vandalism. False insurance claims. Then the knockout punch, the contract trail. With a projector borrowed from the school, I showed $23,400 in HOA funds funneled straight into Whitmore Construction's accounts. "Every month, you've been paying higher fees," I said, pointing at the numbers, "not for services, but to pad Mrs. Whitmore's family business." Gasps filled the room. Jaws dropped. Even teenagers in the back clapped like they were at a concert. Finally, the highlight reel, 12 minutes of Brenda ramming her Escalade into the unyielding concrete can, set to the crunch of breaking plastic. The laughter was loud, but the outrage louder. Then came the mic drop moment. I turned to face Brenda. "You've spent thousands on lawyers, destroyed your SUV, committed insurance fraud, and stalked my family, all over a $23 trash can. But the real crime is the $47,000 you stole from this community." The place erupted. Brenda snapped. She leapt to her feet, screaming about outsiders ruining neighborhoods. The racial undertones hung heavy, caught live by Channel 7's cameras. She clawed at my presentation boards before Jim Torres and two neighbors restrained her. Mascara streamed down her cheeks. "I built this community," she shrieked. "I protected property values. And this is how you repay me." The board wasted no time. Patricia Lopez stood up and made the motion. "I move to suspend Brenda Whitmore immediately, pending investigation and audit." The vote was unanimous, 4-0. Brenda sat handcuffed to her chair as Officer Martinez calmly documented her breakdown. Justice served concrete cold. Within 48 hours, Brenda's empire collapsed. She resigned in disgrace. The DA filed fraud charges carrying jail time and fines. Her contractor's license was revoked. Whitmore Construction was suspended. The emergency audit recovered $47,000 in misused funds. Every homeowner received a $370 refund check before Christmas. Richard Whitmore called me one last time, his voice hollow. "The settlement check is in the mail, $12,500 as agreed. Brenda's moving to Florida." I almost pitied him. Almost. Legacy. Patricia Lopez was elected board president on a transparency platform. Conflict of interest disclosures and financial reports became standard. The first project under the new board? A playground renovation funded entirely with recovered money. The story spread far beyond Pinewood Gardens. Our case was cited in 12 property rights lawsuits statewide. The legislature passed the HOA Accountability Act, modeled in part on our battle. Channel 7 series won a regional Emmy. And the concrete can? It became legend. Installed in the community center lobby with a bronze plaque. Property Rights Protected, 2023. The annual Concrete Can Festival now draws hundreds, turning our once toxic conflict into a tradition of resilience. My scholarship fund helps students who challenge authority with creativity and evidence. Emma wrote her college essay on the fight and got into 3 journalism programs. Tyler runs a YouTube channel, Suburban Justice, covering HOA abuses across the Midwest. Even my business grew. Apparently word spread that I solve problems with precision, whether it's faulty wiring or corrupt boards. Sometimes David really does beat Goliath. But only if David brings allies, evidence, and 60 pounds of reinforced concrete. Backhand index pointing right. If you've survived an HOA nightmare, drop your story in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because justice tastes best when served with community support and a side of creativity.